"Don't sign that, Mr. Abraham." The words tore through the marble dining hall like a gunshot. A crystal glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered against the floor, its echo bouncing off the vaulted ceiling of Rhodes Hall. 11 lawyers froze mid-motion, their pens hovering above documents that smelled faintly of ink, bourbon, and desperation. Welcome back, fams. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments section. Trust your day is going on well. Let us build this community together. Like, subscribe and share to your loved ones. Thank you. At the head of the table sat Joe Abraham, the billionaire developer whose smile had sold half the Atlanta skyline. His hand hovered over the signature line. His expression flickered, surprise, then annoyance, then amusement, as his eyes found the source of the interruption. A waitress. Kayla Wood stood there in her black apron, a tray still trembling in her hands, her chest rising and falling in sharp, shallow breaths. Her voice cracked as she repeated herself, softer but certain. "If you sign that deal, you'll lose everything." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The storm outside pressed against the mansion's stained glass windows, thunder rolling low like judgment. Then Joe leaned back in his chair, his watch glinting beneath the chandelier. "Sweetheart," he said, voice smooth as whiskey, "this is business, not bingo night." Laughter rippled around the table, controlled, polite, the kind that cuts deeper than mockery. Kayla's face flushed, her throat tightening with humiliation, but she didn't move. Her fingers dug into the tray until the metal bent under her grip. "Go on," one lawyer whispered under his breath, smirking. "Serve the coffee." But she didn't. Her eyes were fixed on the pages in front of Joe, dense legal text, margins marked in red, one clause circled in blue ink. Something about it made her stomach twist. She knew what she saw. She just wasn't supposed to see it. Lightning flashed. The chandelier flickered. Joe's pen lowered toward the contract again. Kayla took one step forward. "I'm serious," she said. "That document, it's wrong." Thunder cracked loud enough to rattle the walls. For a moment, even the billionaires stopped breathing. And as rain began to hammer against the stained glass, a question hung in the air. 2 days earlier. The neon sign outside the Crystal Beer Parlor buzzed faintly in the humid Savannah night, its pink glow bleeding onto rain-slicked sidewalks. Inside, Kayla would wipe down the last booth, her reflection bending in the brass trim. It was past closing, the jukebox silent, the air thick with the smell of fried green tomatoes and old bourbon. She moved like someone running on habit, not hope. Her ponytail was frayed, her sneakers damp, but her eyes, those eyes still sparked with calculation. Every tilted picture frame, every uneven floorboard, she noticed. She couldn't help it. The engineer in her never stopped working, even if the world had decided she'd never finish that degree. Once, Kayla had been a semester from graduating at Georgia Tech, top of her civil engineering class. She'd dreamed of building things that lasted longer than people's names. Then her father fell 3 stories on a Joe Abraham construction site, the same Joe Abraham whose photo glared from every Atlanta magazine cover. The company called it an unfortunate accident. Insurance called it an unresolved claim. Bills didn't wait. So she'd left Atlanta, traded blueprints for order pads, and learned to smile for customers who left her pocket change and advice she didn't ask for. She stacked the last set of menus when the bell over the door jingled. A man in a charcoal suit stepped in, shaking off rain. His voice was brisk, rehearsed. "Sorry to bother you so late. I need a last-minute catering order. Private event. Rhodes Hall, Atlanta." Kayla froze, pen hovering over the order form. She glanced down at the signature line. Joe Abraham. The name hit her like a current. "Rhodes Hall," she murmured, the words barely escaping. The man nodded. "Big night. They'll need extra staff too." Kayla stared at the ink until it blurred. She didn't know why, but she felt it in her chest. Something about that order was going to change everything. If you've ever felt invisible, working twice as hard just to be seen once, then don't just watch this story. Stay with it. Because sometimes, being overlooked is how greatness hides. Atlanta shimmered under a curtain of rain as Kayla's catering van crawled up Peachtree Street. When Rhodes Hall came into view, the red brick castle lit like a monument to old money, she felt her throat tighten. 2 stone lions guarded the gate, their eyes catching flashes of lightning like they were watching her. In the circular driveway, luxury cars gleamed under the storm, Bentleys, Teslas, a Maybach, each one dripping rain onto the cobblestones. The kind of wealth that didn't park, it arrived. Kayla stepped out, tugging her catering jacket close. The air smelled of magnolia and ozone. She and 2 assistants carried trays up the marble steps, their sneakers squeaking against the slick floor. Inside, the mansion was a collage of contradictions. Portraits of Confederate generals hung beside glossy abstract art, history and hypocrisy locked in the same frame. From the dining room came the low murmur of voices, expensive voices, tense and clipped. Kayla entered quietly, eyes lowered. At the far end of a massive oak table, Joe Abraham sat surrounded by 11 lawyers and advisors, his gold cufflinks glinting as he slammed a pen down. "We can't afford to lose this one," he said. "Not after Midtown Tower. Not again." The room fell silent except for the steady tick of a grandfather clock. Papers rustled, laptop screens flickered, and a lawyer whispered something about structural negligence. The words cut straight through Kayla. As she poured bourbon into crystal glasses, she watched without watching, body language, tone, posture. Fear had a rhythm, and this room was keeping time with it. One contract lay open near her tray. A blueprint sketch peeked from underneath, stamped with a revision code she didn't recognize. She moved on, pretending not to notice. But her engineer's mind already had. Something about that paper didn't add up. And soon, she'd prove it. Kayla moved silently between the lawyers, her tray balanced steady despite the tremor in her hands. The scent of bourbon and steak hung heavy, the kind of luxury that coated the air. Around her, the men spoke in clipped, impatient tones, phrases like statutory negligence and environmental compliance tossed around like poker chips. She wasn't supposed to hear. But she did. She always did. As she reached for an empty plate near the end of the table, her eyes flicked to a glowing tablet screen, open legal documents, fine print stacked in dense paragraphs. Her gaze caught a detail no one else seemed to notice. Revision 4A, it read. The next page, Revision 4B. Her brow furrowed. That couldn't be right. In civil design, a single revision meant a whole new protocol, different measurements, different safety specs. You didn't just swap those codes like typos. It was the kind of mistake that could nullify everything that came after. She blinked, heart hammering. The room blurred for a second, voices fading to a dull hum. These 11 lawyers, paid more per hour than she made in a month, were defending a contract built on the wrong revision. She glanced toward Joe Abraham. His jaw was tight, eyes sharp, waiting for solutions that weren't coming. He didn't know his billion-dollar defense was already crumbling. Kayla's breath caught. Should she say something? Her father's voice echoed in her head, "Don't ever speak where money eats, baby girl." But another voice, her own, whispered back, "What's worse? Losing my job, or watching them destroy themselves?" The answer twisted in her chest. She turned to leave, fingers trembling around her tray, eyes lingering one last time on the screen. "They're all blind," she whispered. Outside, thunder rolled again. And somewhere deep inside her, the decision had already been made. Kayla stood frozen behind the table, every muscle tense. The storm outside cracked against the mansion's glass like warning drums. Her heart pounded louder than the rain. "Mr. Abraham," she said finally, her voice trembling, "there's something wrong with those files." The room stilled. Forks hovered, glasses stopped midair. 11 lawyers turned, incredulous. Joe Abraham looked up from his papers, one eyebrow arched. For a long second, he just stared, then leaned back, lips curling into a smirk. "Darlin'," he said, smooth as aged bourbon, "this is law, not housekeeping." Laughter erupted around the table. Polished, restrained, cruel. The kind of laughter that made your soul shrink if you let it. Kayla's face burned. Her grip on the tray tightened until the metal groaned. She swallowed hard, fighting the heat rising behind her eyes. In that instant, she saw her father again, flat on a hospital bed, his back twisted, his hands scarred from building one of Joe's towers. Her humiliation began to morph, shame twisting into anger, anger into focus. Her gaze dropped back to the contract spread across the table. There, highlighted in blue. Clause 12, B site drainage responsibility. Something clicked. The numbers didn't make sense. The drainage slope, the rainfall totals, it couldn't be right. She didn't need a law degree to see it. She needed a ruler and a conscience. Thunder boomed, shaking the chandelier above. Kayla took a slow breath, her decision forming in the silence between laughter and lightning. She turned toward the window, hiding the spark that had just ignited behind her eyes. "You'll see," she whispered to herself. "You'll all see." Outside, rain streamed down the stained glass like melted silver. She wasn't done. Not yet. The last of the lawyers had gone. The echo of their laughter still clung to the hallways of Rhodes Hall like cigar smoke. Midnight pressed against the stained glass windows, rain drumming steady as a heartbeat. Kayla stood alone in the cavernous dining room, her apron damp, her curls clinging to her forehead. She should have left hours ago. Instead, she found herself staring at the table, papers scattered like fallen leaves, screens still glowing faintly. The air hummed with silence and electricity. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Her fingers brushed across the tablet, scrolling to the section that had haunted her since dinner. Clause 12, B site drainage responsibility. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, "Water always finds its way, baby girl. Just follow the slope." Kayla grabbed a cocktail napkin, dipped a coffee stirrer into an abandoned pen's ink, and began to draw. She sketched the land's contour from memory, the slope, the drainage lines, the runoff path she'd once studied for a Georgia Tech design project. Within minutes, the truth appeared right there on linen. The plaintiff's claim of a flood damage due to negligent grading couldn't be real. The water couldn't have flowed toward the damaged zone, it would have drained away. She blinked, breath quickening. It wasn't negligence, she whispered. It was geography. A lightning flash lit her face in the glass, a face not of fear, but fierce clarity. The waitress had become an engineer again. Outside, thunder rolled low and approving, as if the storm itself recognized what she'd just uncovered. Kayla folded the ink-stained napkin, slipping it into her pocket like evidence. Tomorrow, they'd know. And this time, when she spoke, someone would have to listen. The rain fell harder. The night wasn't done with her yet. Morning light filtered through the stained glass, painting Rhodes Hall in shards of red and gold. The air buzzed with confidence, coffee cups clinked, leather folders snapped open, and 11 lawyers gathered around the long oak table like soldiers awaiting command. Joe Abraham stood at the head, his pen poised above the dotted line. "Gentlemen," he said, "let's put this mess behind us." And then, "Don't sign that, Mr. Abraham." Every head turned. Kayla stood breathless in the doorway, rain still in her hair, the ink-stained napkin clutched in her hand. Her heart thundered louder than the storm outside. Joe's eyes narrowed. "You again," he said, voice dripping disbelief. She swallowed hard. "The contract, revision 4B was signed, but your defense is built on 4A. That clause they're suing over. It doesn't exist in the final document." The room went dead still. One of the attorneys frowned, flipping through his notes. No, wait," his words faltered. Another checked the file. The color drained from his face. "She's right," the lead counsel finally said, his voice hollow with realization. "The plaintiff's entire claim is void." The silence that followed was deafening. Joe slowly lowered his pen, his confidence collapsing into awe. "Who the hell are you?" he asked. Kayla met his gaze, no tremor, no hesitation. "Someone who reads the fine print." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, as if on cue, thunder cracked above the mansion, not a threat this time, but a declaration. Joe leaned back, studying her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Miss Wood," he said quietly, "I think we need to talk." And for the first time in her life, power didn't look like money, it looked like truth. A week later, the marble and glass tower of Abraham Industries loomed over downtown Atlanta like a monument to power. Inside, the boardroom buzzed with tension. Reporters waited in the hallway. The rival developers had come armed, lawyers in dark suits, folders thick with accusations. At the head of the table sat Joe Abraham, his expression unreadable. And beside him, to the astonishment of everyone present, sat Kayla Wood. No apron. No tray. Just a simple navy blazer and calm eyes that said she belonged there. "Mr. Abraham," one rival attorney began sharply, "this woman interfered with privileged corporate documents. She's unqualified, unlicensed, and in possession of company materials. Her so-called evidence is inadmissible." Kayla let the words roll past her like wind through glass. Then she slid a folder across the table. "You mean these materials?" Inside, time-stamped digital logs showing her access came after the meeting ended, rainfall data from NOAA, and a signed statement from the project foreman confirming her topographic correction. Each sheet landed like a gavel strike. The rival lawyers exchanged looks, their confidence wilting by the second. Joe leaned back, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Seems to me," he said, "the only negligence here is yours." A ripple of restrained laughter moved through the room. Kayla didn't smile, not yet. She was too focused on the quiet collapse unfolding across the table. When the opposing team finally gathered their papers and left, the silence that followed felt like sunrise after a storm. Joe turned to her. "You saved my company," he said. Kayla met his eyes. "No," she replied softly. "I just told the truth." Outside the window, Atlanta glittered, a city rebuilt on second chances. But even victories can come with choices, and hers was waiting in the next room. The morning paper hit Savannah's doorsteps with a headline that shimmered in black ink across the page. "The Waitress Who Outsmarted a $1 billion Lawsuit." Kayla stood on her small apartment balcony, the dawn light brushing her face, her heart somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. The humid breeze smelled like magnolia and renewal. Below, the city hummed, same streets, same people, but everything felt different now. Her phone buzzed again with a message from Joe Abraham's assistant, offer confirmed. Risk and compliance analyst. Full scholarship to Georgia Tech reinstated. She exhaled softly, eyes stinging. For the first time, her future didn't feel borrowed, it felt earned. Later that afternoon, she visited her father at the rehab center. His hands, still rough from decades of labor, trembled as he held the newspaper. "You did what they said we couldn't, baby girl," he whispered, tears shining in his eyes. Kayla smiled through her own. "No, Daddy. We did. Weeks later, the glass doors of Abraham Industries slid open. Kayla stepped through in a crisp navy suit that still carried the faint scent of peach blossoms and determination. The same halls that once looked unreachable now opened like an invitation. At the reception desk, a woman smiled. "Good morning, Ms. Wood." Kayla returned the smile, calm and certain. "Good morning," she said. "Let's get to work." As the elevator doors closed behind her, the city skyline gleamed, no longer a world she served, but one she shaped. Sometimes, her voice lingered in the air. Power doesn't wear cufflinks. It wears courage. If this story moved you, support the channel, like, subscribe and share to your loved ones, not because she won, but because she wasn't supposed to. Stay. Because stories like hers remind us what strength looks like when nobody's watching. Thank you.